Mr. Gift epitomizes the highest standard of professionalism, expertise, and dedication in the field of occupational health and safety. His achievements serve as an inspiration to us all, reminding us of his importance of prioritizing safety in every endeavor. Please join me, I repeat, please join me in welcoming no other but the one and only Mr. Gift Lelegbene. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for that introduction. I want to thank everybody for joining us. As he has said, my name's Gift Lelegbene. I started my career from the oil and gas industry back to the construction industry. Part of that career was mainly with a piling professional company, an international piling company, which were specialized in special foundations. And by virtue of that company, I was able to be in at least 4 or 5 countries outside Nigeria in terms of piling operations, various massive operations, starting from 2015. So when it comes to piling and special foundations, I have some good knowledge in that area. So that is a good one from my colleague. I just want to appreciate you for that brief introduction. I would like us to dive straight into the webinar section. Like the topic implies, safety in construction piling, we are going to be looking at what it entails. What are the safety requirements for construction piling activity? We are going to be talking about what construction piling is all about, types of piles. Let me share my screen with you guys so you can see my screen. Can you see my screen, please?
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Can someone confirm if you can see my screen?
Can see it.
Okay.
Very clear.
I also want to ask if you can hear me. If you can hear me loud and clear, can someone
Loud
also
and
confirm if you can hear me
loud and clear? Loud and clear.
Okay, so I'm going to be your pilot on this flight. Let's sit back, put on our seatbelts, get our writing materials. You might likely want to put down 1 or 2 things. It's very, very important. So like I said, our topic today is safety in construction piling. My colleague has given a brief introduction about the company I work with, Kevron Consulting Limited. We are a consultancy and training company which offers various services to national and international clients. We also render ISO standardization services, management or quality assessment services, sustainability services. Also do manpower outsourcing and recruitments, outsourcing of a few HSSC professionals on projects and advisory services for businesses, security services, background checking, vetting, security trainings, procurement, supplies and maintenance of safety security equipment, floor marking and signages. All these are areas we are into. So if you're interested, you can as well contact us after this webinar for more details. So I'll quickly go to the next slide. Yeah, these are the topics we are going to be touching this morning. Lesson number 1 is going to be on introduction. Lesson number 2 is going to be on types of pies. Lesson number 3 is going to be factors influencing pie selection. Factors influencing pie selection. Number 4, we're going to be talking about understanding potential hazards in piling. Number 5, we're going to be talking about site-specific risk assessment. Number 6, we are going to be talking about developing comprehensive safety plan for piling activity. Number 7, procedures for piling. Number 8, we are going to be talking about training requirements for piling personnel. Number 9, we are going to be number 10, we are going to be talking about safe hand. While the last one, which is number 11, we are going to be talking about the emergency preparedness and response protocol for piling activity. So I'll quickly move to the next slide so we can start immediately. Now, introduction to piling and its importance in construction. Construction piling is also known as piling. Technique used to support structures and transfer loads from more stable layers of soil, support heavy vertical or lateral loads. So piling is especially an engineering technique used to support structures, high-rising buildings, or railway lines, bridges. All these are some of the kind of foundations that needs piling. Now, the process involves driving or drilling long structural elements down pies into the ground. These pies can be made of various materials such as concrete, it could be steel, could be timber, depending on specific requirements of the project. And the subsurface conditions. Pies are installed vertically or at an angle, depending on factors such as soil composition, load requirements, and space constraints. So pies are driven or drilled into the ground. And we have various types of pies. We'll get to all that. It could be vertically driven, or it could be on an angle, depending on what type of pile is being driven. Now, once installed, these piles will serve as the load-bearing elements. It's going to be deeper or into the deeper soil or rock. Now, they also provide lateral support and resistance in case of lift forces, seismic activity, and other external pressures. So when you drive piles, the load on those piles is being beared. Drill pile up to the rocky part of the ground, and the rocky part becomes the part that bears the load, the weight of the load. Throughout the pile, the vertical structure, the whole pile carries the load down. So when you see high-rising buildings, you see bridge ground piles or foundations, special foundations that are carrying such structures, bearing all that weight. So we're going to be jumping to the next slide. Importance of construction piling. What are the importance? Why do we need construction piling? You can see pictures of piles that have already been installed on the right-hand side of this slide. Construction pile is essential for ensuring stability, safety, and longevity of structures, particularly areas prone to soil movement, seismic activities, or other geotechnical challenges, which is true. It helps for stability of structures. You can hear stories of collapsed structures, collapsed buildings, a lot of them, a lot of stories. These are some of the challenges: structural failures, cracks, due to movement of foundations, so on and so forth. So piling is important because it helps for proper stability of the structure, for safety and longevity of the structures. Then it also plays a critical role in enabling the construction of tall buildings, bridges, waterfront structures, and other infrastructure projects in a wide range of environmental and geological settings. You can also agree with me that when you're doing projects like shore protection, you do piling. It could be sheet piling, it could be concrete piling. All these are structures put in place to ensure that our buildings are. So I'll quickly go to the next slide. I think I'm going to be giving rooms for questions, but let's talk about types of pies. Then I'll give room for 1 or 2 questions before we move ahead. I don't just want to go through the whole slide without interacting. I want this section to be a bit interactive. So I'll be talking about the types of pies before we move ahead to the next slide. So types of pies. Now we have various types of pies, but in this slide, we have to categorize the types of pies to type of how the pies are driven. We have a lot of pies. We have sheet pies. We have.
Please, can we have this in presentation mode, please? I think people are asking if you can have it in presentation mode. Sorry to cut out your presentation so that they can see the slide well. Thank you.
Okay. Is it okay this way?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Then if you can be a bit audible too as well, Gift. Thank you.
Okay,
This is
sir.
Janaka down the line. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Okay, talking about types of pie, we had to categorize them in terms of how these pies are installed. We have different types of pies. We have precast pies, we have sheet pies, we have ball pies. You can name the different kinds of pies. We have different kinds of pies, but we decided to streamline them into how they are driven or into how they are installed. Now, 2 major installation processes for pies is either they are driven or they are drilled or bored, the ground is bored or drilled. Then we also have the injection style or injection method. So talking about driven pies, in driven piling, pies are forcefully driven into the ground using specialized equipment such as hydraulic hammers or vibratory drivers. This method is suitable for dense or compact soil conditions and offers relatively high installation efficiency. So when you go to construction sites and you see a vibro hammer fixed to a sheet pile and it vibrates the pile into the ground, it's also called a driven pile. If you go to a construction site and you see a hammer hitting hard on precast piles with loud noise, it falls within the category of driven piles. If you go to a construction site and you see water injection machine being used to inject into the ground or into the water and the pile is driven into the ground, it's also a driven technology. that's also applied. Then for bore piles, in bore piling, holes are drilled into the ground using augers or drilling rigs, and then these piles are inserted into the holes and filled with concrete or grouts. Bore piling is often used in softer or more challenging soil conditions and allow for greater flexibility in pile size and depth. Yeah, I believe some of us who have been in the construction industry for a while, we would have seen where large rigs drill into the ground, drill massive holes, depending on the specification of the pile or the type of pile. The sizes could be up to 1,000 diameter. You can even up to 1,500 diameter, 800 diameter, 600 diameter. Like for the bridges you see, most of them, those pillars you see under those bridge, they are 1,000 diameter. That's the wideness of those piles. You drill with the auger into the ground, a very large hole into the ground. The depth could be around maybe 35 or close to 40 meters depth into the earth. Then they introduce the reinforcements and they introduce the concreting. That is how these piles are being installed. In some cases, they could include permanent casings to ensure that the pile is properly protected from the top to the bottom. So depending on the kind of pile that is being required in such environment. So what are we saying? Every pile falls within these two categories. Either they are driven by hammer, by vibrating into the ground, by injecting into the ground, using force of water, or you bore the ground by drilling the ground using auger to drill open the ground, and you do the concrete casting process. So every pile you see falls within these two categories. So before I move forward, like I said earlier, I don't know if anyone has a question. We'll entertain maybe one or two questions before we move ahead to the next slide. I want it to be an interactive section. I don't want it to be a one-way flight. I want us to interact. If you have any questions, if we don't have questions, I can move ahead to the next slide so we can continue. If you have any questions, you can just leave your hands. Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, please. My question is, I want to find out, is it advisable to put a permanent casing when piling?
Because, sorry, can you introduce yourself first? Can you mention?
Okay, please. My name is Ampedu Daniel Akwesi, and I'm from Ghana, Accra. I'm in Accra Technical University.
Okay.
I find out a BTech student.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to find out, is it advisable to include a permanent casing when piling? Because from what I know, in piling, the loads are distributed to the soil because of the friction between the piling and the soil, and also some is also distributed at the toe of the pile. Yeah. So if there is no friction between this pile and the soil, then it's going to be difficult for the load transmission to be distributed evenly in the soil, as the load travels from the pile cap to the pile toe. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying.
Yes. So what I learned is, including a permanent casing, it's not that advisable. So I want to be clear on that.
Okay. Permanent casing depends on the pile. Now, it depends on the topography of the soil. Now, before you do piling, there is what we call the geotechnical survey. Are you familiar with that? Can you hear me?
Yes, please. I'm very familiar with that.
There is what we call the geotechnical survey.
Yes, which is part of the site investigation.
Generally we call it soil tests. They do soil tests. That's the general language you call it. The layman will call it on the street. we call it soil test. Now, the soil test report tells you how the soil looks like, the type of pile. We'll get to all that. It's in this webinar. The type of pile that's suitable for that environment. Now, most of the times, you consider the costs, also the costs. Any pile you use permanent casing from the top to the bottom, it's expensive. That pile is always very expensive. 1. 2, the kind of soil you have there, it's a soil that is collapsing constantly, and it's a bit difficult for you to drill in such environment. So the reason for introducing the permanent casing is to ensure that something holds the wall from the top to the bottom, from collapsing into the drilled hole while the casting is done. That's the reason. The reason for introducing casing is because of the nature of the soil. Now, during drilling, most of the times, if the soil is very loose, you find out that drilling becomes very difficult. When you drill to a certain distance, the soil collapses inward into the excavation. So it becomes very, very difficult. So what they do is they introduce a temporary casing while they drill to a certain level. Then they start introducing the permanent casing, which stays permanently. Concrete is casted into the permanent casing after you introduce your reinforcement. So it becomes permanent. So it depends on the topography of the soil or the nature of the soil and how the soil reacts there. That is when they will now advise the geotechnical engineers, after they've gone for soil sample test, they will now advise either in this certain area we are going to be using permanent casing, like a project we did in Morocco, 2018. The kind of soil we have there is a bit stony. So even when you drill, we had a situation where our rig almost collapsed. But while we drill, everything was just collapsing inward. So we ended up reviewing the method that was applied. They started using permanent casing, introducing permanent casing into the drill hole while we drill, and it was casted along. So the purpose for introducing permanent casing is when you have very loose soil, to ensure that there is something like a retaining wall around the drilled hole so that it will not collapse, the walls will not collapse. Even when you drill with bentonite, it still collapses. That's to tell you how loose such kind of soil. And I've also been to a project site whereby we drilled without temporary casing and without any permanent casing because of the nature of the soil. The soil was very compacted, strong. There was no need. Like in the northern part of Nigeria, it's rocky and strong. In some cases, you don't even need bentonite to even drill along with. You just do dry drilling and you do your introduction of your reinforcement and your concrete casting. Have I been able to answer your question?
Yes, please, I'm clear on that.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other question? Please ask and move on before we move on.
Yeah, there's one here.
Okay. You introduce yourself before you ask your question, please.
So this is Daniel Entry from Ghana as well, and then Accra Technical University.
Can you speak louder a bit? Sorry, can you speak louder?
I said this is Daniel from Ghana, and then Accra Technical University.
Okay.
Daniel. So I want to ask this: there's this static machine by the Chinese. The Chinese people use it a lot for mostly bridges when they are doing bridges. But I just want to ask whether is there a kind of hammer machine that they use to inject the power down, or it's just a driven?
How does the machine make loud noise? Does it hammer like you're hitting something?
Yeah, it usually have this crane, something at back there.
Okay. Then it has a hammer at the front that hits the pile.
Yeah, like buckets, it goes and comes, goes and comes.
Okay, like a bucket,
Yes.
Can you see this picture? The bottom picture, something like a bucket.
Yes,
but
it
comes out. Okay,
Yes.
okay.
But normally don't have the it's not like this kind of machine. It's just there fixed. It doesn't have that change down there.
Okay, but it has a bucket that goes into the hole,
Yes.
brings out
Yes.
the spoils. It will pour out the spoils, goes back in, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we call it the ball piling rig. It's called ball piling rig. It goes with a bucket. Sometimes it goes with the auger. You can see the picture at the top. There's the auger. It goes with a bucket. So depending on what they intend to do at each point in time, they change it. You can change it. It's just like your typical drilling bits. You have a drilling bit. You can change the drilling bits. The little drilling machine used for drilling holes in your wall. You can change the drilling bits to different sizes. So the same thing applies for this drilling rig. You can change change to a bucket, change to an auger, depending on what they intend to achieve at each point in time. Then you can see by the side, at the picture at the bottom, you see the temporary casing by the side. That temporary casing helps, it stands as a retaining wall while you drill to avoid collapsing of the surroundings. That's what it's used for. So by the time you drill to a particular length, you now introduce your permanent casing, or if you don't need your permanent casing, you keep on drilling with your bentonite fluid, your bentonite, to help retain the wall before you do cleaning of the borehole and introduction of reinforcement and concrete casting. So you are right. It's still a drilling machine, a piling machine. They have different types. There are some of them that looks like a massive crane with booms and so on and so forth, while some of them look like the typical excavator machine you see. You can see this one is looking like an excavator machine, carrying an excavator back, and it has a rig at the front. Is there any other question before we move ahead? Okay, in absence of any other question, I'm going to move ahead to the next slide. So you can see pictures. You can see pictures of various kind of rigs and piling ongoing. To my top left corner, you see what my brother from Ghana was talking about. You can see that's the temporary casing. The rig is holding the temporary, is connected to temporary casing, is introducing the temporary casing inside the drill hole. While drilling will continue, the temporary casing is going to serve as a retaining wall, while you drill inside, and they keep pushing the temporary casing down into the earth. Then the next picture at the bottom, you see a precast piling rig trying to lift a precast pile, already fabricated concrete pile on the ground, and it will pick it up, take it to the piling point, and start hammering it into the ground. You can see some of them that have been hammered into the ground. If you look at the bottom picture at the middle, you see piles that have been installed on the ground. These are the ones like similar ones that were done in Dangote Fertilizer in Nigeria. They had areas they did precast piles like this, and they had areas they did the ball piling where you have to drill into the ground. Although the precast piles are more expensive, the ball piles are cheaper compared to the precast piles. Precast piles are more expensive for installation. You look at the upper picture, the top right picture at the top right corner, you have a long auger, a drilling auger with a hose attached to it. It's called the continuous flight auger. Is another way of installation of piles. This you drill like a drilling bit, removing the spoils. Concrete is pumped through that pipe with the concrete pumping machine. Through the auger, it goes into the ground. After that, you install your reinforcement and you move to the next piling point. Then at the bottom right corner, you see just like a shore protection by the side of the river. This is sheet piling. You have a vibro armor attached to a crane. The crane picks the sheet pile, gets into the guard, position it. You have guys who position it properly, and the vibro armor will vibrate the piles into the ground. You can see the power pack. There's a power pack by your left-hand side of that picture. Someone is standing operating the power pack while the vibro armor vibrates. Then we still also have micro piling rigs. That depends on the kind of, if you have very tight spaces, you need to work, you need to do pile installation, like in confined spaces, silos, already existing structures. You can't move such massive rigs into those places. You can move micro piling rigs. If you Google it, you see them, micro piling rigs. They are smaller mini rigs like these ones. They can be moved into buildings. I think we did one in Cameroon. We did one in Cameroon before the COVID-19. I was in Cameroon for a micro piling operation where we had to work on an existing factory. They had foundations issues, cracks due to that. So there was a need to remedy the situation. I've also been to a project where we had to do micro piling for foundations of a silo in Nigeria. One of the massive oil producer, one of the massive producers of Indomie and the series and so on and so forth. They had problems with their silos where they store their wheats and so on and so forth. So that is a quick one. We have pictures of other kind of rigs depending on the type, but these are the common ones you see in every massive construction site. These are the common ones you see every day, every time. So let's quickly move to the next picture here. We have factors influencing the selection of piles. Factors influencing the selection of piles. Load requirement and environmental cost. So this comes to the question my friend from Ghana asked this morning. The soil condition. Remember, I spoke about the soil condition, the type of the soil, the density and stability of the soil at the construction site significantly impacts pile selection. Different types of piles are suitable for different soil conditions. For example, driven piles may be more appropriate for dense soil, while bore piles are often used in softer or more vulnerable soil conditions. So, selection of the type of piles that needs to be installed depends on the type of the soil, the density, the stability of the soil in that particular construction site. Another requirement is load requirement. What is the load required by the pile to carry? The anticipated load that the piles will need to support determines the type, the size, the spacing of the piles. You know, I gave an example of bridges. You can see the sizes of those foundations of those bridges. Some of them are 1,000 diameters. Some of them are 1,500 diameters. So depending on the load the bridge is going to be carrying, you can't be doing that for let's say a fertilizer gas plant or a refinery. It is not, none of them would be carrying up to that kind of massive weight. What we did at the Dangote fertilizer, the largest we got there was around 800 diameters. Was the largest I observed there in that project. So depending on the load requirements for the pile, these are some of the requirements that determine the selection of the pile: the soil condition, the load the pile intends to carry, the structure. Heavy structures or high-rise buildings require piles with greater load-bearing capacity and stiffness, while lighter structures may require fewer or smaller piles. A simple example is you're building a 5-story building and you're building a 70 or let's say a 20-story building. You agree with me that the load-bearing capacity of the piles would be very, very different. So that of a 20-story building is going to be a different size of pile, the structure, the length, a whole lot of things, factors are also factored into the process. The environmental consideration also, environmental factors such as water table, groundwater levels, proximity to bodies of water can influence pile selection. Piles may need to be designed to withstand hydrostatic pressure, buoyancy forces, or corrosion in marine environments. So these are some of the factors that you consider in pile selection. Structural configuration. What's the structure like? The design, the layout of the structure, the support system, you know. So these are some of the factors that must be considered during pile selection. This is always done in the planning stage. In the planning stage, they consider all these factors that must be looked at. Factors such as building footprints, column locations, foundation depth dictates the arrangements and spacing of piles. So let's go to the next slide. Now, construction methodology is also considered. Construction methodology is also considered. Now, this has to do with whether driven piles or ball piles can influence pile selection. They're going to be looking at what kind of pile are we going to be choosing or installing. Are we going to be doing a ball pile where you have to drill a big hole into the earth? Are we going to be driving the piles? Are we going to be driving the piles using a hammer, vibro hammer, or injection process? How are we intending to install these piles? These are also considered. Accessibility and site constraints. I talked about this. I said there are sites where you just need a micro piling rig because you already have existing structures there, and the massive rigs cannot go into such environments. So what they do is they bring in smaller rigs which can be moved into such environments. So accessibility and site constraints are also considered. Space, logistic consideration may impact the selection of piles. For example, restricted access sites may require the use of smaller equipment or specialized installation techniques. Cost consideration. Like I spoke to my Ghanaian friend, we talked about cost consideration. Piles, precast piles are also expensive. Then piles that carries permanent casing from the top to the bottom is also very expensive because of the materials involved. So these are some of the factors that are considered during the planning stage: the cost of the pile, accessibility to the site, methodology on how we intend to install the piles. Then regulatory requirements is another issue that must be considered. Local laws, local building codes, regulations, industry standards. This may also dictate certain requirements for pile selection, designs, and installation. Compliance with regulatory requirements is essential to ensure structural integrity and safety. You will agree with me that for some time we had issues in Nigeria, in Lagos State to be particular, where buildings were collapsing every day. Almost every month you hear a story of one building collapsing and another building collapsing and a lot of persons dying, stuff like that. So the government had to come in hard on regulatory bodies, coming hard on real estate managers or real estate guys who intend to develop, or developers who intend to build structures. There were guides, codes that must be followed. So these are some of the factors that must be considered during this period. So by carefully considering these factors and conducting thorough site investigations and engineering analysis, engineers and contractors can select most appropriate piles, types, and designs to meet the specific needs and challenges of each construction project. So looking at all these processes, it gives the engineers and the contractors a proper info on the kind of pile that needs to be installed in any particular site or project. So I'll be going to the next slide. Sorry. Understanding the potential hazards. At the top of this thing is, I'm trying to see if I can move it. Sorry. Yeah, potential hazards with piling activity. Now, structural collapse. Improper installed or overloaded piles can lead to structural collapse, endangering workers and nearby structures. Collapse can occur during pile driving, excavation, or foundation settlement phase of construction. Struck by hazards. Workers are at risk of being struck by falling objects such as pile segments, tools, or equipment during piling operations. The high energy impact of pile driving equipment poses significant hazard if safety precautions are not followed. Now, I'm going to give site experiences of potential hazards in piling activity. I've been in a construction site where part of a segment of a precast pipe fell from the top during the lifting process. Now, if someone was close to that operations, someone would have died. So a lot of things could happen. A lot of things could go wrong. So one has to be very, very careful during piling operations. Rigs could collapse. You can see pictures of a collapsed rig on ground. We had an incident like that in the Dangote Fertilizer Plant project where a massive rig collapsed. It was a serious national concern. So these are some of the potential hazards. Structural collapse. It could happen. I was in a project in Morocco where we almost had a rig collapse due to the soil topography. While drilling, we didn't know that underneath the whole rig, the whole soil was collapsing. It took grace and it took experience and a lot of technical ability for us to move the rig from that structure, from that particular area. It would have been a massive incident on site. So these are things that could happen. Equipment accident. Personnel could be struck. We had a near-miss incident also where part of a rig component fell from the top after the rig assistant just pulled off from the particular area where the rig was, after speaking to the operator, and he left. A component of the rig, due to vibration, fell from the top. And if that part of that rig struck that rig assistant, it would have been a dead man on the spot. We've had a situation where sling wire ropes snapped and became an horse sweep and hit worker, the rig assistant, and it was a serious injury. So these are hazards or things that could go wrong. Equipment accidents. Heavy machinery used for piling, such as cranes, pile drivers, and drilling rigs, can cause accidents if not operated properly. Equipment malfunctions, operators' error, or inadequate maintenance can lead to injuries or fatality. Noise and vibrations. Pile driving generates high level of noise and vibrations, which can pose health risks to workers and nearby residents. Prolonged exposure to excessive noise levels can cause hearing loss, while vibrations may affect nearby structures or sensitive equipment. Now, for loud noise, you agree with me that these machines are massive, and when they start working or when they are operational, there's a lot of noise. A whole lot of noise. If you're going to be doing the hammer piling, there's a lot of noise, serious noise that is above the approved exposure limits for workers and even nearby structures or building. Vibration also. If you're doing the vibro hammer, or you're using vibro hammer, or you're using the pneumatic hammer, there's a lot of vibration. The structural integrity of other structures around could be affected. So there's always an impact assessment done prior to when, during the selection process, they look at nearby structures around. What's the impacts? What's the impacts? Are we going to use vibration method? Are we going to use boring method? This is where the selection comes in. If you have close by structures in a very close proximity to the piling site, there will be need for you not to use a vibration or a hammer pile. It's either you use a ball pile. So there is a need, because of the risk involved. If you applied vibration or hammer pile, nearby structures could collapse as a result of the impact of the vibration on the ground. Then exposure to a lot of loud noise by persons around. So these are also concerns. So these are some of the potential hazards associated with piling activity. We still have a lot of them. Ground instability. From the previous picture you saw, you can see that a rig collapsed. A piling risk collapse due to instability of the soil. Now, one of the concerns we need to look at carefully is the stability of the soil, the platform on which the rig is going to be positioned for drilling. It's very, very important. Ground stability. Piling activities can destabilize the ground, leading to soil subsidence, landslides, or sinkholes. Soil conditions, groundwater levels, and nearby structures must be carefully assessed to mitigate the risk of ground instability. So if you see the previous picture of a piling rig that collapsed, it shows. I've been in a project site at Nigeria here in Lekki, where we were doing a continuous flight auger drilling. And a nearby structure that was sharing a fence with the site we were working began to have cracks everywhere on the fence, cracks everywhere on the boys' quarters. We had to stop that drilling operation immediately. We had to bring in guys to do integrity tests, structural integrity tests, and some other stuffs. We had to, a whole lot of process all together was put together before we could move ahead with that project. So this is what piling could cause. It could cause soil movement, which will affect neighboring buildings. Even the rig could collapse if you don't have properly stabilized platform for the equipment to work. Environmental impacts. High driving and drilling can have adverse effects on the surrounding environment, including habitat destruction, water pollution. For instance, talking about water pollution, if you have poorly maintained equipment, you find out that hydraulic could flow into water bodies around. If you're walking close to a river or you're walking close to the seashore, you know, this could affect aquatic lives around. It could even pollute on the groundwater. So these are some of the impacts you have. Then a lot of pollution from engines of machines, from the exhaust. This calls for proper maintenance of equipment also to reduce the pollution into the ozone layer. We all know what that's the effect of such pollution could cause to the environment. Proper mitigation measures must be put in place, such as sediment control and erosion prevention are essential to minimize environmental impact also. And proper maintenance of our equipment also is very, very important to reduce emission into the environment. Chemical hazards, I talked about that. Your drilling fluids, avoiding them to flowing into the streams or into rivers. Chemicals used for piling operations, such as fuel, lubricants, concrete additives, pose risks of exposure to workers and the environment. Proper handling, storage, and disposal of hazardous materials are necessary to prevent accident and environmental contamination. This is where we talk about training the workers, SDS cards, safety data sheets for every chemicals on site to ensure that workers know how to handle these chemicals, exposure level, PPE is needed for all that. Very, very important. Ergonomic hazards. Piling activities involve repetitive tasks, heavy lifting, awkward postures, which can lead to musculoskeletal injuries such as strains, sprains, back injuries. Ergonomic assessments and controls are essential to prevent work-related injuries and promote worker health and safety. Very, very important. There are always repetitive work or tasks involved in piling activity, mostly for the rig assistants, even for the operators that are sitting for a very long period of time. They get tired. They have the sustain. At the point they start having backaches, waist pains, these are common with these guys. You know, the rig assistant, the same thing, always lifting shackles, chains for hooking piles, you know, for unhooking, lifting reinforcements, so on and so forth. These processes, at the end of the day, you hear them telling you we're having back pains, joint pains, body pains, you know. So these are some of the hazards associated with piling activity. Electrical hazards also are involved. Overhead power lines. These are massive equipments with booms, you know. During movement process, you need to be careful. Electrical hazard may arise from overhead power lines or electrical equipment used in piling operations. Contact with live wires or improper grounding can result in electrocution or electrical fires. This is very, very important. During mobilization to site, one needs to be very, very careful because this machine are massive. They are, when you see them on, and when you get to it, where you have overhead power lines close to work sites, maybe access to work sites, maybe it's an already developed environment. You need to navigate through these areas, and there's possibility of contact. So there's a need for you to ensure that safety procedures are applied by getting to the power authorities, ensuring proper LOTO procedures are followed by shutting off power lines, disconnecting the power lines for these machines to pass through before they can reconnect. A lot of processes must be considered. Then apart from that, do you have underground facilities around that area so that when you drill down into the earth, you don't get contacts with underground facilities, maybe pipes, boreholes, gas pipelines. These are some of the factors that need to be considered while you carry out or before you do your piling activity. The lands need to be scanned for underground facilities to be sure that there is none. To be sure that there is none. Confined spaces. When you drill, you create a confined space. A quick one, I have an experience in this area. We were in a project many years ago where an expatriate rig operator who was drilling had his iPhone dropped into the drill hole when he came out of his cabin just to check on something. And now what happened was that he had to send the rig assistant to put on an harness belt, use the service wire rope hooked on, and ask the rig assistant to go down almost 30 meters, the earth. Because of his iPhone, this became a very serious issue that was discovered by the client, and that expatriate guy was sent out of the project. The guy, the rig assistant who got down the earth, was also sent out of the project. Now, we all know the hazards involving confined spaces. Workers may be required to work in confined spaces, such as excavations or boreholes during piling activities. Hazards associated with confined spaces include limited oxygen. Limited oxygen down there, toxic gases, entrapment requiring proper training and security are also required. So imagine that guy who went down into that hole and the hole collapsed, he would have been a dead man. That would have been a fatality in that project. So these are some of the hazards considered or that must be carefully considered before piling or during piling activity. Now, we must ensure that control measures are all in place to mitigate this hazard. Comprehensive risk assessments will be in place, proper training, adherence to safety regulations, and the use of appropriate personal protective equipment are essential. Regular inspections, hazard identification, and communication among workers and supervisors are also critical for maintaining a safe work environment during construction piling activities. So these are some of the hazards involved in these activities. So I'll move to the next slide. I don't know if anyone has a question before we move ahead. Does anyone have a question? Okay, if anyone doesn't have a question, we'll move ahead. Assessing site-specific risk. Assessing site-specific risk, factors and proximity to existing structures. I think we've talked about something related to this in our previous slide, but I'll still go through it. Soil conditions. Conduct a comprehensive geotechnical investigation to determine the soil composition, strength, and stability. This may involve soil sampling, laboratory testing, and analysis of geotechnical reports. The reason for this is to identify any soil anomaly or problematic conditions such as soft soil, expensive clays, loose fuels, or groundwater presence. You evaluate the bearing capacity of the soil to ensure it can support the load imposed by the piles. Consider soil settlement and consolidation characteristics to minimize risk of differential settlement. So these are some of the factors that must be considered by the engineers before piling can be done. First thing you do, just like what we have on site here, you carry out a geotechnical soil investigation. Now, this report is going to be sent to a lab. Guys will analyze the results, and they will end up telling you the nature of the soil, the kind of piles that can be installed there, the strengths, and so other informations that are needed. Environmental factors. Assessing environmental conditions such as proximity to water bodies, wetlands, or environmental sensitive areas is very, very key. Evaluate the potential impact of piling activities on wildlife, vegetation, and aquatic ecosystem. Consider noise, vibration, air quality impacts on nearby communities and sensitive receptors. Determine regulatory requirements related to environmental permits, mitigation measures, and compliance with environmental regulations. I have made mention of all this in one of our previous slides before. These are factors that must be considered. Factors that must be considered before piling can be done. You must determine, you must carry out a geotechnical soil investigation, get the results analyzed. You must have to also consider environmental factors that will be impacted, aquatic lives, so on and so forth. Can someone please mute your mic? I'm hearing noise somewhere. I don't know where. Can you mute your mic? Can someone mute your mic? I think someone's mic is on. Can you mute your mic, please? Can we all mute our mics, please? Now, proximity to existing structures. Now, identify nearby existing structures such as buildings, bridges, utilities, or other ground facilities. I talked about this in the previous slide. I talked about underground facilities. I talked about nearby infrastructures that must be looked at. Assess the potential for ground disturbance, settlement, or damage to adjacent structures during piling activities. I also give an example of one of the projects where while we were drilling, the adjacent or the building sharing fence with us started having cracks. These are some of the concerns that needs to be looked at. Consider the effects of vibration, noise, and construction-related activities on the stability and integrity of neighboring structures. I've talked about this also. It's very, very important. Develop mitigation measures such as monitoring, pre-construction surveys, and protecting measures to minimize the risk of damage to existing structures. Very, very key. You must carry out a pre-construction survey, monitoring, protecting measures to minimize the risk of damage to existing structures. Now, in order to assess site-specific risk effectively, it's essential to engage qualified geotechnical engineers. I'll repeat. To assess site-specific risk effectively, it is essential to engage qualified geotechnical engineers, environmental consultants that will carry out environmental impact assessment of that activity, structural engineers early in the project planning process, Collaboration among multidisciplinary teams through site investigations and adherence to regulatory requirements are critical for identifying and mitigating risk associated with construction piling activities. Additionally, ongoing monitoring and evaluation during construction can help address any unforeseen challenges and ensure safety and success of the projects. So these are some of the key factors that must be considered. I don't know where this noise is coming from, please. Can someone mute your mic, please? If your mic is on, please mute the mic, please. I'm getting noise from somewhere. I don't know where that noise is coming from. So please, I don't know if anyone has any questions, you can ask me before we delve into developing a comprehensive safety plan for piling activity. If you have any question, you can ask before I move into developing a comprehensive safety plan for piling activity.
I can see Emmanuel Opong hands up. Please,
Emmanuel
can you unmute yourself?
Emmanuel Opong, you can unmute yourself and speak, please.
Good morning. My name is Emmanuel Opong from Ghana. So I've been following the meeting from the preliminary stages, and I observed the certain considerations that we factor in place when we are constructing piles and then all. I wanted to ask if there is any consideration that is being made with reference to sustainability, because in as much as we've considered the ergonomics, the economics, the safety, its surrounding, feasibility studies and all, risk assessment and all inclusive, I was concerned about if we as engineers maybe these days have structured an initiative where we factor in considerations based on sustainability, as it has been a global issue these days. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Talking about sustainability, yeah, the industry is innovative. It's innovative every day. New designs are coming up every day. Sustaining the process, it's also a very key factor. Sorry, can someone mute your mic? Can someone mute his mic, please? Sustainability is a key factor you've talked about. It's very, very important. Very, 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 very important. Sustaining the process is key. And I think one of the reasons is engineers, they put together competent teams. Like I made mentioned in the previous slide, I think I should go back. So we look at it. Now, we have regulations on ground that ensures these are national and international regulations also. Guidelines must be followed. Then we also have to put together a proper team. Like I said, you must have essential qualified geotechnical engineers in your team, environmental consultants, structural engineers, even the safety engineers during the planning process. Now, a lot of factors are considered, very, very key. Now, sustainability also has to help in terms of ensuring that governments, regulatory bodies are up to their task also. Permits are provided or issued. There has to be checks and balances in the system where people assigned to do their tasks also check to ensure these things are in place so that the standard will not drop. Because one of the challenges we have here in Africa is we have good policies, we have good standards in place, but over time, people begin to corruption and some other stuff begin to creep into the system, and you find out that what needs to be done are not done at a particular point in time. People start taking bribes and things begin to happen. So this sustainability is one of the challenges we've had. We've had good plans, good standards, so on and so forth. But sustaining it is a serious challenge. This also falls back to us as individuals. governments, bodies, regulatory agencies. What are we doing? Are we doing our part? Are we playing our parts? Even as engineers also in the field, there are some engineers who compromise the standards. I'm telling you real time, real information. There are there are engineers who, okay, a typical example is one of the largest buildings in Lagos at Ikoyi, to be precise, that collapsed, I think last year or 2 years ago, where even the owner of the building died. It was a national thing. Now, from informations gotten in the media and maybe from part of the investigations, was that the previous firm that was building that structure decided to move out of the project because they wanted them to compromise on certain standards. And so the real guys who started the structure had to pull out of the structure, while other guys moved on, and that was what led to the incident. So for us as engineers, for us as safety professionals, for regulatory bodies, we need to be on top of our game. We need to avoid corruption so that someone doesn't end up dying, because at the end of all this, people die in the process. If a building collapses, someone dies. So we need to hold ourselves accountable, starting from the engineers, starting to the regulatory bodies. We need to ensure that everybody plays their part. Nobody is compromised. Nobody looks the other way and collects money. Because he wants to make money and or forget about the standards that must be met. So we all need to play our part, the engineers, the regulatory bodies, international regulatory bodies, and national regulatory bodies, to sustain the standard, to sustain the process, so that we will not have lives lost. So I want us to move ahead, because we have a lot. We have a lot to cover. Okay, I think we've passed here.
Okay, I don't know if I can add a voice to what you just said. My hands has been up. I don't know if
yes.
Okay, this is Ninaka Adefode. Yes, I think the last question, Pax, you've actually explained, but I just want to add a voice to what you've said. You know what? I think globally, everybody is beginning to talk about sustainability, and if you look at what one of the things he shared, he talked about having your HSE plan on how you want to carry out your piling operations safely. And within the plan, what we are doing now is to now include what we call sustainability within your plan, to tell us, to show us that how are we sure that the planning practices would not deteriorate the environment? How do we ensure that the piling practices not only benefit our environment, but also contribute to a more resilient and responsible construction process? So we all look forward to building a greener future together. So within the HSE plan, it's very important that as the HSE consultant, we look at how do we ensure that the piling process or the process that has been set in place embraces sustainability practices. For example, one of the things we also look at is that how does our piling operation lead to water contamination? That's one issue. And we know that once there's water contamination, it compromises the integrity of the waterways, which can lead to chemical and sediment leaching into water resources as well. Of course, the aftermath of that is to affect both human health and aquatic life, which we don't want. So one way we do that is we can mitigate this by reducing water contamination even during the piling process. So some of the questions will have the piling contractor tell us that how you want to ensure that the waterways is not contaminated, or the aqua life is not impacted so much, and show us that you your system is going to promote eco-friendly piling practices and safeguard water resources. That's one of the examples. Then the other thing is in terms of carbon footprint. We know that piling processes, okay, requires intensive energy, and intensive energy is often released during the process, and which obviously leads to CO2 emission, which can contribute to climate change. And so every phase of piling process, one of the things we also want to confirm from the piling contractor is that you need to demonstrate to us that each phase of the piling process, right from material production to selection, how are you going to reduce carbon emission? Is it the type of piling operations, in terms of the process, in terms of the selection of the piling materials, or the type of piles you want to use? We'll most likely go for piling operation that reduces CO2 emission as much as possible. So that's what how we can include sustainability in terms of soil disruption and ecosystem as well. Right from the point when we are dealing with piling contractors, we ask them, how do you ensure that you want to minimize soil disturbance? Because if you do that, what does that mean? You upset the local ecosystem, you affect the flora and fauna, okay, which we don't want to do, so that we can promote sustainability. Wildlife habitat are disrupted around the area where the piling operation is taking place. So one of the things we do to control that is for them to show us. They have to demonstrate that they have system in place to minimize environmental fruit, to minimize the impact on the environment, on wildlife, on habitat. Then lastly, one of the things we are also promoting now is innovative strategies, just like he has said. To promote sustainability, honestly, different piling equipment are being developed every day. There's what we call the prime piling method. Okay, so the prime piling employs most often use sustainability materials and make use of efficient water management system, and is a form of advanced piling techniques, and this helps to minimize the impact on the environment as well and promote eco-friendly practices. So what we are saying is that yes, what you've said is vital, but we also need to make sure that in summary, all this has considered between our HSA plan. And when we're engaging the contractor early enough, we need to ask them early enough, what kind of piling method are you going to be using? What kind of piling rig are you going to use? Is it going to prevent soil disruption, ecosystem? How do you use that? In terms of carbon footprints, are we using piling rigs that emit low CO2? Are we going to have a process that reduces water contamination and disruption to the ecosystem? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kayode.
Thank you for that contribution. Thank you, sir.
Sorry for taking some of your time, Gift.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
No problem. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I also thank my Ghanaian colleague for that question. It's a good one. So we're going to move forward, developing a comprehensive safety plan. I think this area also will also help to address part of your question. Now, developing a comprehensive safety plan for construction piling activity is essential to ensure the well-being of workers, protect nearby structures, the environment, and mitigate potential hazards. It is a step-by-step guide. Okay, this below is a step-by-step guide for developing such plan. Now, for any piling operation, during the planning phase, there is need for everybody to be carried along. Like I said in the earlier slides, every subject matter expert is carried along, including health, safety, and environmental experts are carried along. Now, everybody is going to put in their impact or their input to ensure that every aspect is properly addressed. Now, first thing that needs to be done is a risk assessment is done. The purpose for a risk assessment is to identify assess potential hazards associated with construction piling activities, including soil instability, equipment operations, environmental factors, and proximity to existing structures. Now, you also consider site-specific risks, soil conditions, project scope, regulatory requirements. You also have to carry along qualified engineers, safety professionals, project stakeholders in the risk assessment process. It's a very, very key thing that must be done. So everybody must input in the process to ensure that every aspect is properly addressed. The environment is not impacted negatively. Nearby structures are not impacted. The health of workers who will be engaged in the process, even nearby neighbors. So a lot of factors are also needs to be assessed. Until they are all addressed, you cannot start a piling project. So the piling contractor must tell us how he intends to handle all these factors. Now, he has to establish his safety goals, objective and goals that clearly defines the safety objectives for the construction piling activity. He has to emphasize the importance of preventing accident, injuries, and environmental incidents. For the environmental angle, where you have the environmental impact assessment team comes in, telling you how that activity is going to impact the environmental environment and the mitigation process that needs to be put in place. All these factors will be keyed into your HSE plan. How you intend to reduce or prevent accidents on sites for your workers or injuries, all these processes must be included in your safety plan. You must set measurable targets for performance indicators to track progress and evaluate the effectiveness of your safety measures. All this must be in your safety plan as a contractor. You must develop a safe work procedure. It must be captured in your safety plan as a contractor. A safe work procedure must be developed for every part of that activity. How do you handle chemicals? What's your procedure for equipment, certification, training, a whole lot of things. Installation process, post-installation process. All these must be captured in your HSE plan, your safety plan, as a contractor or as a construction company that has a piling contract. You must prove in your HSE plan that you have a safe work process or procedure in place. For lifting, because you must lift piles, how are you protecting? How are you recruiting your operators? Are they competent? The machines you are using, are they certified by third-party certification bodies, fit for use? Very, very key. What's your installation process? You have method statements clearly spelling out the procedures that must be followed. So a lot of factors must be in place. Our roles and responsibilities of workers, supervisors, engineers, managers clearly spelled out. These are factors that also must be in your HSE plan as a piling contractor. You must incorporate industry best practices, manufacturers' recommendations, and regulatory requirements into safe work procedures. For instance, you are going to be using bentonite for drilling. Do you have your SDS or your safety data sheets from the manufacturers of your bentonite contractor or someone who is supplying you your bentonite? Do you have the SDS that gives you proper information about that fluid or that material? You have other chemicals you apply to your concrete. You have the SDS. All these must be in your HSE plan. You must state how you intend to get these informations, how you intend to disseminate these informations to your workers, to those handling all these materials. You must provide training and education. You must provide thorough training, safety trainings. This has to do with induction trainings for new employees, induction trainings for visitors to sites, specific trainings for those who are handling special activities like your operators, your riggers, your rig assistants, very, very key. Then those, sorry, those who are handling special operations, special activities, you must have a plan in your HSE plan, a detailed plan, a detailed training plan on how you intend to give these guys this training. Like for the operators, they must be certified by a third-party certification body that they are competent guys. Sorry. Sorry. They must be certified by a third-party competent certification body that these guys are certified guys. They have the experience, what it takes to operate such machines. The same thing for the rig assistants. The supervisors, minimum safety trainings is required. Emergency response procedures. Everybody must understand the emergency response procedures on site. For instance, let's go to the piling team. Do they have means of communication? How do they communicate with each other? Even when there is an emergency, how do they communicate among themselves? Generally on site, you have emergency response procedures on site. Is everyone aware of these procedures on site? So in case of emergencies, everybody will be aware of what to do at each point in time. You have the proper personal protective equipment for these guys. Are they trained? Do they know how to use them? Do you conduct safety meetings to ensure that safety information are disseminated? You do toolbox talks on site. You do refresher training sections to enforce safety work practices and promote a good safety culture on site. All these informations must be in your safety plan as a piling contractor. You must tell us how you intend to do these things. They are very, very key. So these are some of the measures you must put in place in your safety plan as a piling contractor to ensure that your project is executed without any incident or accidents. Implement safety controls and measures. Now, you must have engineering controls in place, administrative controls, and personal protective measures to mitigate, identify hazard, and minimize risk. Now, using engineering controls such as noise barriers, vibration dampeners, guardrails to reduce exposure to hazards, implement administrative controls such as work permits, signages, and access restrictions to control access to hazardous areas. Provide appropriate PPE such as hazard safety glasses, gloves, hearing protection to workers as needed. So all these are control measures that you must put in place. You must tell us how you intend to apply them on site as a piling contractor. Do you have established emergency response procedures? I made mention of this before. You need to develop a detailed emergency response procedure for responding to accidents, injuries, spills, or other emergency related to construction piling activities. I think I'm going to dwell a little bit on this area. Now, you can't take away emergencies from any construction site. So you must ensure that you have an emergency response procedure on site. It must be your health and safety plan telling us how you intend to address the various emergencies that could happen or occur on site. For instance, fire on site. I've been on a site where
a piling rig caught fire. We used 9 bottles of 9 kg fire extinguishers on that site before we could be able to put up the fire. Reasons was most of the guys who handled the fire extinguishers didn't know how to use the fire extinguisher. We had record of trainings, they've been trained, but most of them have not really done practical training. And so the person who was supposed to extinguish that fire was busy doing videos. The fire watch guy was doing video of how the fire was going and how people were trying to extinguish the fire. It was the senior chief mechanic who had this training that was able to go to behind the rig, open the back of the rig and use the fire extinguisher for the fire to be off. But then it was already too late. A lot of burns had already happened to a larger part of the engine. So training is very, very important. Accidents could happen on site. What of medevac or medical incidents on site? What's your procedure on site? How do you intend to attend to medical situations on site? Do you have trained first aiders on site to act as first responders to such first aid or accidents on site before evacuation? Do you have retainership clinic close to your work sites? Do you have a stationed site ambulance? If it's a remote location, do you have a site ambulance with a site nurse and designated first aiders on site for evacuation of personnel? Do you have fully kitted first aid boxes on site for your first aiders? What is your spill containment procedure? How do you intend to contain spills on site? If you have one, maybe during your maintenance of your rig or your piling rigs, there is tendency for spills. Do you have spill kits on site? All these measures are measures as a piling contractor or as a company, you must tell us or you must put in place in your health, safety, and environment management plan for the project. You must be specific. You must ensure that all workers are trained on emergency response protocols, including evacuation procedures, first aid, and communication protocols. Maintain emergency response equipment such as fire extinguishers, first aid kits, communication devices in readily accessible locations. So these are factors that must be addressed in your health and safety plan. It must be there. You must tell us how you intend to address a fire emergency on site, how you intend to address a first aid incident on site. How do you communicate? How do you pass across information on site? These are key information that must be in your HSC plan. Monitor and review safety performance. It is very, very key that you have a system in place for monitoring and reviewing safety performance throughout the construction of piling projects. Do you conduct regular inspections? Do you carry out audits? Do you carry out audits? Do you carry out safety observations to identify hazards, assess compliance with safety protocols, and address any deficiencies? Do you have a system that encourages feedback from workers, supervisors, stakeholders to identify areas for improvement and implement corrective actions as needed? All these are processes that must be in your safety plan as a piling contractor or as a piling company. You must address these processes. You must ensure you have these processes for monitoring and reviewing safety performances. Document and communicate. You need to document and communicate safety information. Do you have a process for documentation of all aspects? Your safety plan, is it documented, including your risk assessment, your safe work procedures, your training records, emergency response procedures, safety inspections? Are they documented? You have them in hard copies? You have them in box files? Are they recorded? either in hard copies or in soft copies, are they recorded? Communication or communicate safety informations effectively to all workers, contractors, stakeholders through safety meetings, training sections, safety signages, and written procedures. All these must be in place. Ensure all workers have access to safety documentation and know how to report safety concerns or incidents. This has to do with hazard identification and reporting process. Do you have an hazard identification and reporting process on site where workers are free to pick a form, fill it, and report an anomaly observed on site? Or can workers walk up to a safety officer and report? Does the worker have authority to stop an unsafe activity? So by following all these steps and incorporating and inputting an input from all stakeholders, construction piling projects can develop a comprehensive safety plan that effectively identifies and mitigates risk, promotes a safe work environment, and ensure the successful completion of the project while protecting the health and well-being of the workers and the community. So by putting all these measures in place, I assure you that if you have all these measures in place as a contractor, your projects will be carried out successfully without having any issues. Establishing safety protocols for piling operations. Now, pre-construction planning is very, very important. Conduct a thorough site assessment to identify potential hazards, including soil conditions, environmental factors, and proximity to existing structures. I've talked about this before. You now develop a site-specific safety plan that outlines procedures for site preparation, access control, hazard mitigation. You ensure that all workers are trained in safety protocols and procedures specific to piling activities before commencement of work. Equipment safety. You have to ensure that all piling equipment is properly maintained. Now, I'm going to dwell on this a bit. One of the questions we ask piling contractors or piling companies is during the pre-qualification processes, do you have records of your previous maintenance? Do you have previous maintenance records of your equipment? Most of the times, they don't keep records. It's not as if they don't do maintenance on their equipment. They do maintenance, but they don't keep records. It is very, very important. Now, most of the times we also ask questions is, do you have the manufacturer's manual for your rigs? Do you have the manufacturer's maintenance manual for your rigs? These documents come with the equipment. If they don't come with it, you can easily go to Google, go to their website and download it. Now, when you go through this equipment, these documents, they tell you how to handle this equipment. Now, we tell you most of the times to give us a maintenance plan. Maintenance plan has to do with, okay, this rig is going to work for like 5 hours or 40 hours, and it will go for scheduled maintenance while we bring in another rig. Then, apart from the scheduled maintenance, we have what we call routine maintenance, whereby during the course of operation, something could go wrong, you carry out a quick maintenance and the operation goes on. So you must, as a piling contractor, have a maintenance plan for your equipment, clearly spelled out. You must also have an equipment inspection plan. From pre-mob inspection to third-party certification of your equipment. Providing training for equipment operators. And also ensuring that they are certified by a third-party certification body is also key. And this training includes pre-operational checks, pre-use of controls, emergency shutdown procedures, implement procedures for equipment setup, including proper anchoring, leveling, and securing to prevent tipping or instability. All these are procedures, protocols that must be ensured. Piling installation procedure. You have to develop a standardized procedure for piling installation. including pile driving or driven techniques, penetration depth, pile alignment. This is where we usually ask contractors for their method statements. The method statements will tell you the methodology you intend to apply, the scope of work, materials to be used, personnel to be used, equipment to be used, number of piles to be driven or to be done. A whole lot of information comes in. So the moment your method statement is available, it captures these informations. So it is very, very important that every piling contractor or piling company must have standardized procedures for piling. And apart from that, there are international codes or standards that must be adhered to. Like for Nigeria, they always follow the British standards. The engineers will tell you, these are the British standards for piling, for this code, for that code, that stands for each regulations or each standard that must be upheld. Most of the times, it is also imputed in your method statement. You see them citing it in certain sections, that these are the standards that we are heading to. Either European standard for piling or UK standard for this and that. It's always there. It serves as a guide. Now, we also have to ensure that pile driving or driving operations are conducted in accordance with manufacturer specification, engineering designs, and regulatory requirements. I just made mention of that. You have to monitor pile installation process and performance and promptly address any deviations from plant specifications. This is why we always have quality control guys on piling construction sites. Their duty is to ensure that you follow strictly what you have in your method statement, approved method statement for the project. Designs, engineering designs, regulatory requirements are also adhered to. Environmental protection. You have to implement measures to minimize environmental impact during piling activities, such as erosion control, sedimentation control, spill prevention. It's very, very important. You have to ensure that you've gotten environmental regulatory permits for your job. What are the mitigation measures you have? What is your waste management plan as a contractor? How do you intend to manage waste? What are the environmental impact mitigation procedures measures you put in place? These factors are considered. You must have them in writing and you must implement the processes. Even after getting the permits, you must ensure that the process is being adhered to. You must ensure complete compliance. Monitor environmental conditions and adapt procedures as needed to minimize adverse effects on surrounding ecosystems. Personal protective equipment. This has to do with identifying appropriate PPE requirements for piling activity, including hard hats, safety glasses, gloves, hearing protection, high visibility clothing. Very, very important. Proper workers with proper fitting PPEs and ensure they wear it at all times while on site. Conduct regular inspections to ensure that the PPE is in good condition and replaced as needed. It is very, very key. You must, as a piling contractor, the standard, International Labour Organization standard requires that. As an employer, it's also your duty to provide personal protective equipment for your workers, provide the needed training for them, provide a safe work environment, provide safe equipment for them to work with. So for the PPE, you must ensure that they have the required PPE for the task. Remember, piling comes with a lot of loud noises. They need to wear proper PPEs for that activity. Then, you need to monitor the conditions of the PPEs of the workers. Regular inspection comes in. You need to check. Are their PPEs worn out? Are they due for replacement? You need to check. What is your plan for PPE issuance for your workers in the project? It must be captured in your HSE plan. The number of PPEs you issue to a mechanic is different from what you issue to someone who works in the office or the site office or as an engineer. So this must be captured. I'm just citing an example. A mechanic is always dirty. It requires more coveralls or requires more PPEs compared to a site engineer who does supervision activity. So this is captured in your EPP issuance plan. What is the plan for issuance of PPE? Are you sharing 2 coveralls in 6 months, 4 coveralls in 1 year, or 2 coveralls in 1 year, 1 hazard in 1 year? You must have a plan. Your plan needs to show that this is how you intend to share this. Then you must also have to capture how you carry out your inspection on these PPEs. You must also have proof to show where workers sign to show they received these materials. Emergency preparedness and response. You must develop an emergency response procedure for responding to accidents on site, injuries, spills, or other emergency related to piling activity. Very, very key. You must have an emergency response procedure on site for medical incidents, for fire, for community disturbances or armed attack. These are some of the emergencies that could happen on site. Fire, medical or medevac situations, armed attack, community disturbances. You must have a procedure for all this. Everybody has to be trained on the emergency response protocol, what to do at each point in time. Do you have an alarm system? How do you communicate to the team on site when there's an emergency? How do you evacuate or your evacuation procedure? Do you have trained first aiders? What's your communication protocol? All these must be in writing, and everybody must be trained and aware of the procedure. Maintain emergency response equipment such as fire extinguishers. How often are they inspected? Are they certified by third-party certification body? Your first aid kits on site, are they inspected? How often do you inspect them? Or do you have them on site? Communication devices, are they readily accessible? If you are in remote locations, you need a walkie-talkie. These are factors that must be considered. Communication and collaboration. You must foster open communication and collaboration between project teams, subcontractors, and regulatory authorities to address safety concerns and ensure compliance with safety regulations and standards. Encourage workers to report safety hazards, near misses, and incidents promptly, and establish procedure for investigating and addressing safety concerns. Very, very important. This is very, very important. I think I'm going to dwell on this a bit too. Do you have a process of reporting hazards identified on site for everybody? Do you victimize people who report incidents on site? Do you have an incident investigation procedure or accident investigation procedure on site to determine the root cause and immediate cause and provide control measures to ensure that such incidents don't reoccur in the future? Do you cascade the learning points to your team from every accident or incidents on site or near miss incidents on site? Continuous improvements. Do you have an established procedure or system for monitoring and evaluating safety performance throughout the construction piling projects? Do you conduct regular safety inspections, audits, and reviews to identify areas for improvement and implement corrective actions as needed? Do you encourage feedback from workers, supervisors, stakeholders to identify lessons learned and opportunities for enhancing safety practices? All these must be in place. So by implementing these safety protocols and procedures, construction piling projects can create a safe work environment, protect workers, and even the host community where you're working, and ensure successful completion of the project. Training requirements for piling operations, emergency response, and hazard recognition. Now, there is a need for training of personnel that has to do with piling operations. It is essential to ensure they are equipped with necessary knowledge, skills to operate equipment safely, respond effectively to emergencies, and recognize and mitigate hazards. Now, equipment operation training. You must provide comprehensive training on the safe operation of piling equipment, including pile drivers, drilling rigs, and auxiliary machines. You must cover topics such as equipment setting up, pre-operational checks, proper use of controls, and safe operating procedures. Ensure operators are trained to identify and respond to equipment malfunctions, emergencies, and abnormal operating conditions. And this is why we always advise piling companies to engage third-party certification bodies, because when you engage these guys, you go through this process. Most of the time, the training could be 2 or 3 days extensive training, which also involve a practical section at the end of the training to test if these guys are really good at what they do. Some companies will tell you, this guy has been piling, he has been operating for over 50 years. Good. But there are safety protocols that needs to be observed. You need to check if these protocols are adhered to, are followed strictly. It's just like someone who jumped into his car in the morning and drives off without carrying out pre-use check, without checking water level, oil level, brake fluid level, checking the sound of the engine, checking of headlamps, checking of your indicator lights, and the documents in the vehicle, are they expired? The same thing applies to your piling team. Are the operators certified by third-party certification body? Are copies of these certificates available? The same for the machine. Does the operator carry out daily pre-use checks? Is it recorded? Is the equipment checked on a routine basis? Do they understand the operational procedures? Do they understand what to do in terms of an emergency or in an operational failure condition, or when there is a failure with the machine? Do they understand how to control, what to do? Are the emergency stop buttons functional? All these are informations that needs to be known. The operators need to know these things. This is why proper training needs to be done. Emergency response training. There is a need to conduct training on emergency response protocols specific to piling activity, including evacuation procedures, first aid, and communication protocols. Now, you have the rig assistants or the riggers. They have a way of communicating with the operators. Are these workers trained? Do they apply these communication procedures? Are they trained to recognize common emergencies such as equipment failures, collapses, and spills? How to contain spills during mechanical maintenance activity? Do they have drip trains or drip pans where they should be positioned during mechanical maintenance? Do they know how to apply the LOTO process when they are doing maintenance? Are they aware that the operator is not supposed to operate the machine when the mechanic is carrying out maintenance in the rig, in the machine? A lot of processes, they must be aware. They must have undergone the necessary trainings. You must provide hands-on training and simulations to practice emergency response procedures in a realistic scenario. Do you conduct emergency response drills on site? To test if everyone is aware of the emergency response procedure on site, how they respond, if there's a need for resensitization of the work team on the emergency response procedure, because the drill you carry out will show you areas that needs improvement. Hazard recognition training. Have you trained the piling team on how to identify hazards, recognize hazards, report hazards, mitigation techniques relevant to piling activities? Can the workers go around and identify hazards associated with piling operations, including soil instability, like the example I cited? When the piling operations is going on, the rig assistants, do they understand when there is a need to stop the piling operation if the platform begins to become unsafe for them to work? Do they know what to do? Equipment hazards, environmental risk, proximity to existing structures. How do they have necessary knowledge to identify all these? Like a typical example I cited, where we were drilling somewhere and we began to observe cracks on the wall. Does these guys understand how to observe things like this and stop the operation? There's a need to educate the workers on the importance of conducting pre-task hazard assessments and implementing controls to minimize risks before commencing work. Pre-task hazard assessments or toolbox talk sections for everybody to understand the risk involved in the task and control measures that needs to be applied. Job-specific training. Training is tailored in such a manner that every worker understands their roles and responsibilities of piling. Every personnel, down from the project manager, the site manager, the engineers, the operators, the riggers, the supervisors, down to the workers. Everybody understands their roles and responsibilities. It is very, very important. Do they have the needed experience, the skill level or skill sets? Do they understand their job roles? So there's a need for also providing refresher training courses to reinforce these concepts. There's a need to also promote continuous improvement in safety performance. These are also keys. Regulatory compliance training. There's a need to ensure that personnel are familiarized with safety regulations, industry standards, and best practices governing piling operations. Your project managers, your site engineers, do they understand safety regulations or industry standards that has to do with piling operations? Is every worker, or does the workers understand their legal responsibilities and obligations under occupational health and safety laws and regulations? This applies to your safety professionals on site, your workers on site. Does the worker on site understand his roles, his legal responsibilities? Does he know that his duties is to ensure that he complies with safety procedures and standards on site? Does he know that his duties or roles and responsibilities includes assisting his employer to work in a safe manner, identifying hazards and reporting it, compliance with safety procedures, the use of safety personal protective equipment in the right manner, and maintenance of such materials, the right to stop an unsafe operations and reports. Workers need to be trained on their roles and responsibilities. Occupational health and safety professionals need to guide workers and ensure regulations and standards are met on site. Provide training on regulatory requirements for equipment inspections, maintenance, record keeping, and reporting of safety incidents. It's also very key. This is why you need your safety supervisors on site. They must carry out inspections. They must ensure that these records are maintained. Maintenance records are kept by site engineers on site. Incident reports are developed and also kept by safety supervisors on site. Documentation and record keeping. There is a need for us to maintain accurate records of training activities, including attendance, course materials, and assessments. When you carry out training, do you keep training records? Do you keep attendance records for such trainings? Do you issue course materials or training materials? Do you assess the trainees after the training to know if they really understood what the training is all about? Do you set a little test for them? Do you keep these records? Do you document individual training achievements, certificates, and qualifications for each piling personnel? Ensure that training records are accessible and up to date and retained in accordance with regulatory requirements and company policies. Until now, I'm aware that every record must be kept for a minimum of 5 years before you can dispose of. It's assumed that if you keep records for 5 years, you must have generated records within that 5 years before you dispose of. So before you dispose of any safety records for any company, they must have stayed for a period of 5 years. That's what the requirement says. Now, by providing comprehensive training in equipment operations, emergency response, hazard recognition, and regulatory compliance, piling personnel can effectively mitigate risk, prevent accidents, and ensure safe and successful completion of piling activities. Please, do we have any question before I move ahead? Does anyone have a question before we move ahead? Okay, in absence of any question, we'll move ahead. Personal protective equipment for piling operations. Now, there's a need to look at this. It's very, very important. Personal protective equipment plays a crucial role in ensuring the safety and well-being of workers involved in piling operations. Now, we have a list of them outlined. We have the hard hats. It protects the head from impacts, falling objects, and overhead hazards. Now, I want to give an example for those of us who have been in the construction and oil and gas industry for a very long time. You agree with me that the hard hat is very, very important. Now, a typical scenario on site. We have a piling operation going on in the fertilizer plant. During the piling operations, we were doing precast piles. We were driving with a hammer rig, and that hammer is around 15 to 20 tons. And we have the rig assistants. After they've driven that pile to a certain depth, the operator stopped for the rig assistant to go and carry out an inspection on the part of the rig. And as luck may have it, the moment he stepped away from the rig, a part of a component from the rig mass dropped. If that component had dropped on the hard hat or on an empty head, the person would have been a dead man. Now, hazards will help to reduce or cushion the effects of the impact. Imagine he was not wearing a safety hazard and he was there, it would be fatality on the spot. Now, if that thing had dropped on his head, what would have happened with that? Would have been maybe the helmet shredded, or if it doesn't shred, although it was not a massive part of the rig, it was just a little component that broke off. It would have been able to protect him from direct impact on his head. But in as much as you're putting on helmet, there are certain dropped objects that will kill you even with the helmet. And that is why we said when piling operations is on, when the machine is operational, nobody is around, is allowed to stay within 10 meters radius around the equipment. You must stay outside. Now, where the rigger stands is directly opposite the operator's cabin for hand signals. There are areas the operator cannot see, the blind spot of the machine. So the rig assistant becomes the operator's eye. So when something goes wrong, it gives the operator's signal for the operations to stop while it goes to check. If there's a need for the operator to come down and check, he comes down to check. So nobody is always allowed close to the rig when it's operational because anything could go wrong. So hazard is very, very important. And the hazard must meet international safety standards, which is also here on this slide. You can see that. So every safety helmet must meet this standard. We must also check to ensure that this safety helmet has not expired. Safety glasses or goggles. It's very, very important. It helps to protect the eyes from flying debris or particles, dust from impacting the eyes or direct contact with the eyes. And they also have standards that must be met. You can see the standard there. So in acquiring these PPEs, you must ensure that you meet up with international safety standards. Hearing protection. You will agree with me that these massive machines come with a lot of loud noise from the machines. If you're using the vibro hammer or you're using the pneumatic hammer, there is a lot of noise. There is a need to protect for hearing protection. And so the operators, the supervisors, and the rig assistants must all protect their ears by wearing earmuffs or earplugs. Now, hearing protection helps to reduce the high level of noise generated by pile driving or drilling operations. Like I said, they could use earplugs, earmuffs also. They must be of the right ratings. Very, very important. High visibility clothing is also very, very important. It enhances visibility of workers to reduce the risk of accidents, particularly in areas with moving equipment or traffic. Should be reflective and meets the ANSI standards. Hand gloves helps to protect the hands from cuts, abrasions, and chemical exposure during handling of equipment, materials, and tools. We must choose the right or appropriate gloves for specific tasks and hazards, such as heavy-duty leather gloves and chemical-resistant gloves or chemical-resistant gloves. So depending on the activity the worker is exposed to, there is a need for us to give them or choose the right gloves. Steel toe boots, which we usually call safety boots, we must also provide for them, or as a piling contractor, you must provide for your workers a steel toe boot with the right protection for protecting their foot from heavy objects, crushing hazards, and puncture hazards. It must meet it must meet the safety standards, international safety standards for steel toe boots or footwears. You can see a picture of how a piling guy needs to work. Then respiratory protection, guards against inhalation of dust, fumes, or airborne contaminants generated during piling activities. Yes, those guys carrying the bentonite bags, there's always dust from those bentonite bags. What about the chemicals they use for concrete mixing? Inhalation of dust and fumes. They must put on respiratory protection. Could be nose masks, depending on the type or level of exposure. Could be dust masks, could be respirators, or powered air purifier respirators. So the common ones we have are dust masks and respirators. Then fall protection equipments. It is very, very important that you have a fall protection equipment on site for piling rig team. There are times they need to carry out maintenance activity on the mast, on the rig. They have to go up. If you don't have a mobile elevated work platform, you must have a fall protection equipment used by the worker, like a full body harness. When they are at the top of the mast, they need to anchor properly to avoid or to restrain them from falling down. I heard of an incident that took place, I think 3 or 4 months ago, where a worker climbed a drilling auger and fell from it and broke his thigh bone. Up till now, the guy is still at home. The company is just paying him salary at home. But I don't think that guy will be able to make use of that leg the way he used to use it. So these are some of the incidents that could occur. Either use the mobile elevated work platform with your harness belt anchored to do maintenance at the rig mast, or you use what we call retractable lifeline, the yo-yo, which is the street name or the site name for it, the yo-yo, with your harness belt. While you move, while you climb the mast, your yo-yo is properly anchored on your harness belt. While you walk or losing anything you tend to lose. So it is very, very important. You must have your harness belt with double lanyards, anchor points. It must anchor properly. Safety harness. You use it in conjunction with fall protection equipment for workers at elevated locations or working near elevations. Should be properly fitted and inspected regularly for wear and tear. There must be inspection of your harness belt on a regular basis. Very, very important. Protective clothing. Additional protective clothing may be required for specific hazards, such as chemical-resistant coveralls, flame-resistant clothing, or arc flash protection gears. It's very, very important. Now, I'm going to dwell on this a bit. For the guys who are handling cement, who are handling bentonite, they must put on chemical-resistant clothing. For the welders, they must put on fire-resistant coveralls. They must use welders' aprons, face shields, hearing protection, nose masks because of welding fumes. They must have fire extinguishers around during hot work activity. Gas cylinders must be on trolleys. They must have flashback arrestors installed on your oxygen and acetylene bottles. The torch and the gauge area, the gauges must be functional. You must have a method of checking for leakages on your hoses or your gas bottles with the use of soapy water solution to check for leakages on a regular basis prior to use. Hoses must be of the right quality to avoid explosion. Burning torches must be of the right quality. Electrical welding machines must be grounded. Very, very key. It's essential to provide adequate training on the proper selection, use, and maintenance of PPEs to ensure workers understand its importance. And comply with safety protocols. Regular out or one out.
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, apologies. I think Mr. Gift had network issues, but he'll be back. I think he's back now. Thank you.
Yes, he's back. He's back.
Like I was saying in my last conversation, sorry for the break in transmission. It was due to network problem. I was asking if anyone has a question before we move ahead. Does anyone have a question?
Hello, sir.
Okay, go ahead. You can
Please,
mention
mine is a contribution. My name is Matthew Mensah.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, sir. Sir, in regards to the fall protection equipment that are being brought to a construction, despite the maintenance records that we will be having or we will be maintaining on site, before any equipment is mobilized to site, we have to do a third-party inspection on it and ensure the third-party certification is also in place, just to cover up that the equipment are fit for purpose. So that is the little that I can add up to the equipment that are brought to site in regards to fall protection and other mobile equipment that are used at the construction site. Thank you.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes, Gift, we can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think I lost the audio from that contribution.
All right, sir. If I may repeat, what I said is, my name is Matthew Mensah, and my contribution is in regards to third-party certification of equipment, mobile equipment, fall protection and equipment, and any other equipment that are used at the construction site. That we must emphasize that these equipment are being inspected by third party and with a certification in place, just for fit for work or fit for the equipment is safe for its intended purpose.
My brother.
Thank you.
They bother me.
Yeah, thank you for that contribution. Please, can you all mute your mics? Someone is talking on the background and it's interfering with the conversation here. Yeah, it's a good one for my brother Mensah from Ghana. This is a good one. It's a good contribution. And even with that, from experience, we found out that some contractors go to doctor a third-party certification report. Now, even when you have a third-party certification report, there is a need for you to confirm for confirmation. Apart from confirmation, there is what we call a pre-mob inspection. When that equipment gets to site, you need to carry out another inspection as a safety professional on site to ascertain if that equipment is still in a position for use. I don't know the right word to use. If that equipment is fit for use, I think that's the right word. You must have a checklist, an internal checklist that you use for that inspection, and it must meet all the requirements. You also have the right or have the prerogative to recommend closeout actions if there are observations that needs to be closed out. There are times these inspections are done, and these inspections are done on a yearly basis from my experience. Now, an operator, a company must have done a third-party certification operation for an equipment they've been using for the past 6 months. Now, they've not done maintenance for some while, and they are bringing it to another project site. Now, during your inspection period or process, you may discover that some of the elements that were supposed to be in place are no more in position. As at when that inspection was done, they were in good working condition. As at the point where you are doing your inspection, the inspection certificate is still valid, but from your inspection, some of those components are no more in place. So that is the essence of you doing your own inspection at arrival of such equipment, or even before the arrival of such equipment. You can go to their base, do the inspection, and tell them, advise them on necessary closeout actions before that equipment is mobilized to site. Very, very important. So I'm just adding this to what my brother from Ghana, Mensa, has said. It's a good one. This is what some of these contractors could do. They will tell you, oh God, the certificate is valid. Yes, looking at it is valid, but looking at the equipment, there may be deficiencies in the equipment that needs to be closed out. So going back to our slide, respiratory protection. There is a need. Okay, someone is raising his hand. Mensa, can you go ahead, please? Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
Just to add up to what you just mentioned, the pre-mobilization inspection is very important. Yeah. So on my previous projects, what we were doing is that before the equipment will be mobilized to site, the head office of my company were doing inspection. They will send us, after the third-party inspection, they will do pre-inspection mobilization, and then they will send the report to us on site. Yeah. And when the equipment gets to site, internally, we have to make sure it is inspected and it is fit for use. Yeah. After we have verified and it is fit for use, then we send a report, the internal inspection report, to the client that we have this equipment on site that we want to use. And they also have to come and inspect to ensure that it is fit for purpose. And then they issue a sticker to be sticked on it, to be informed that this equipment has been inspected and it is fit for purpose. So as safety professionals and project engineers, project management, whoever is involved in project or construction activities, let's bear in mind that this equipment that we are working with or we are using for our activities, we depend on this equipment to work, and this equipment are paying our salaries. Therefore, we must also be proactive and think about the lifespan of this equipment. Thank you.
Thank you for that good contribution. So I'm going to be on a very fast track, so we can be fast and round up this webinar, so that some other persons can engage in some other activities. So I know our time is fast spent, so we're going to be very, very fast. Every other question or contribution is going to come at the end of the slide. We're almost done at the end of the slide. So protective, I think I've spoken about safety harness, protective clothing. Additional protective clothing may be required for specific hazards such as chemical-resistant coveralls, flame-resistant clothing, or arc flash protection gears. I've spoken about this. So safe handling and operation of piling equipment, drill, hammers, and rigging. Okay, Safe handling and operations of piling equipment includes drills, hammers, and rigging are essential to prevent accidents, injuries, and equipment damage during construction piling activities. Now we have some guidelines here. Familiarize operators with the specific type of drill being used, rotary drill, percussion drill, and its operating manual. And that is why I said every rig you must have your operational manual. You must have a competent operator who knows how to use that machine. An operator must have used a particular machine. We have different kind of machines. It's not conversant with this kind of machine, but it could be the same kind of machine, but with different make. So there's a need for these guys to be familiarized. They need to conduct pre-operational checks to ensure the rig is in good working condition, including inspection for loose or damaged parts, checking fluid levels, verifying proper lubrications, ensure the drill is securely anchored or supported to prevent movement or instability during operations, follow safe drilling practices, including maintaining a stable footing, positioning the drill at the correct angle, and using appropriate drilling techniques, use personal protective equipment, including safety glasses, hearing protection, gloves to protect hazards such as flying debris and noise exposure, monitor drilling operations for signs of equipment malfunctioning, unusual vibrations, or excessive wear, and stop work immediately if any issues arise. Provide training to operators on emergency shutdown procedures and proper response to equipment malfunctions or emergencies. Then hammers to driving piles. Ensure operators are trained and certified to operate pile driving equipment, including hydraulic hammers, diesel hammers, or vibratory hammers. Conduct pre-operational checks. Conduct pre-operational checks to verify that the hammer and associated equipment are properly assembled, secured, and aligned. During the piling operations, we were trying to assemble the hammer, and the hammer dropped. The hammer fell. These are things that could happen. One has to be very, very careful. There was a time we were hammering, and the hammer got stuck to the pile, the head of the pile, the cap of the pile. During the process of trying to pull it off, the sling snaps. These are things I've experienced firsthand on site. So experience from operators is very, very key. I've also experienced when during removal of auger and concrete casting, the auger got stuck. Operator was trying to pull out instead of rotating anti-clockwise. The sling snapped and struck someone almost to the point of death. These are near-death experiences I saw on site. Nobody told me I was there when it happened. So they need to be careful. Communicate with spotters or signalers to coordinate pile driving operations and maintain situational awareness. So the rig assistants must all have a way of communication between themselves and the operator. They must monitor pile driving progress and adjust driving parameters, e.g. stroke rates, energy, as needed to achieve proper penetration and alignment. They check alignment level with plumb. Most of the piling rig have plumbs by the side and plumbs inside. Sometimes the piling rig assistants also help to plumb the rig, the marks outside for verticality and stability. Also, they also check the tracks while they move, check for stability, check the platform if the platform is beginning to compress or the rig is losing its balance. These are some of the factors that need to be checked. Inspect pile driving equipment regularly for signs of wear, pollution, or fatigue and poor performance, and perform maintenance or repairs as necessary. You have to follow manufacturer's recommendation and industry best practice for safe operation of piling driving equipment. Then rigging, we also know that if you're doing piling operations, you must use lifting gears, rigging gears. There are times you need to lift piles. Very, very important. Ensure rigging equipment such as slings, shackles, and lifting hooks is inspected, certified, and rated for the intended load capacity. Riggers are trained. Operators on proper rigging techniques are also trained, including selecting appropriate rigging hardware, securing loads, and balancing with distribution. It's important the third-party certification body certifies your lifting gears used by the piling rig team for lifting piles
if there are precast pipes, is very, very important. Lifting eyes, safety lashes, all in place. Tag lines for lifting reinforcement, lifting precast for controlling the load, they are all important. That they must use tag lines or guide ropes to control the movement of loads during lifting and positioning of operations. Inspect rigging equipment prior to use. Ensure that defective lifting gears are removed from use. Ensure that only third-party certified equipment lifting accessories are used. Avoid overloading of rigging equipment beyond its rated capacity, and ensure loads are properly balanced and secure to prevent shifting or instability. Follow established hand signals or communication protocols to coordinate rigging operations and maintain safe work distance between personnel and loads. Monitor rigging operations for signs of stress, fatigue, or failure, and take corrective actions to mitigate risk and ensure the safety of workers and employees. Emergency preparedness and response protocol, evacuation procedure, first aid rescue teams. I think we've also talked about this before. There is a need to establish clear evacuation routes, assembly points for workers to gather in the event of an emergency. Do you have muster points on site? Do you have emergency exit routes? Very, very important. Post-evacuation maps and signals in prominent locations around the work site, indicating primary and alternative evacuation routes. You have pictures of your designated first aiders, your fire wardens with their contact details at strategic locations. You have site layout map with emergency routes clearly specified. You have emergency contact numbers displayed on strategic locations on site. These are things that need to be considered very, very important on site. Your itinerary clinic, your ambulance driver contacts, your emergency response team lead contacts, all these must be on site. Designated evacuation coordinators or marshals to oversee evacuation efforts, account for personnel and communicate with emergency responders, conduct regular drills and exercise to practice evacuation procedures and ensure workers are familiar with emergency protocols. So these must be in place all the time. First aid, you must provide first aid training for designated personnel, including basic life support. You have designated first aiders on site who are trained, certified either by Red Cross or by other training bodies. Then you have first aid kits on site. You have automated defibrillators on site. You have emergency medical supplies accessible. Very, very important. You have established procedure for reporting injuries, illness, or medical emergencies, and ensure workers know how to assess medical assistance. Rescue techniques. Do you have have you developed a rescue procedure for responding to emergencies such as worker injury, confined space accidents, or equipment entrapment? Train designated rescue team on rescue techniques, equipment operations, and communication protocols. Equipped rescue team with appropriate personal protective equipment, rescue tools, and specialized rescue equipment such as rope, rescue gear, or confined space entry equipment. Establish protocol for communication to coordinate rescue efforts, including assigning roles and responsibilities. Establish command and control and maintaining contact with on-site and off-site emergency responders like your retainership clinic and your first aiders on site, having a proper communication on situation reports. Conduct regular rescue drills and exercise. Ensure there's a test. You carry out your test, drill test on site to identify areas of improvement. Communication and coordination. You have established communication channels and protocols for reporting emergency on site. Summon assistance and coordinate response efforts. Ensure all workers know how to access emergency contact information, including phone numbers for emergency services, emergency fire services, supervisors, and designated emergency responders on site. You have these numbers displayed on site. Implement a system for communicating emergency alerts, warnings, and instructions to all personnel on site, including use of audible alarm, visual signals, or two-way radios. Coordinate with local emergency services such as fire departments, paramedics, and law enforcement to facilitate rapid response and support during emergencies. So we are at the end of this training slide. I think I want to appreciate all of you guys for attending this webinar section on safety in construction piling. I want to thank you all. This is a time for questions. If you have questions and any contributions, the floor is open for your inputs before we round up this section. Mensa, your hand is raised. Can you go ahead?
Thank you very much for your presentation and enlightening us much in regards to construction safety. I just want to contribute to the lifting and rigging activity on site and also share my experience. On my previous projects, we had a lifting activity which was to be carried out. I think a 30-ton gear was to be lifted onto a mill deck. And with a lifting crew, after preparing their lifting plan or the lifting study, ensuring that everything is okay, and the lifting started. So at a distance of half a meter, because it was an activity of two cranes positioning the gear in a vertical position. So one holds the bottom of the gear and the other one also held the upper part of the gear to ensure that it is positioned vertically and ready to be lifted onto the gear. So as they were positioning it in place, a sling of 30 ton, which was used. It wasn't initially one sling that was used, it was two which were used, so making it 60 ton, which was prepared for the lifting. So the one that was in position at the bottom part, when the activity began and there was tension in the lifting operation, there was a hook, the ratchet hook, which snapped the sling, and unfortunately the gear fell. And the good news was that there wasn't anybody in the vicinity for us to have any injury or of that sort. So per the investigations and everything that was done, the recommendations were that after the preparation of any lifting activity, we must have a third party or a third person to also come and do the verification and ensure that it is all is set and safe to be carried out. And this third party was the client, any personnel from the client side. So that was the recommendation. And as we are, discussing this construction safety, I need to share it with the professionals on who have attended this program, so that everybody will also, take it as part of their experience and ensure that after before any lifting activity is done, we need to critically examine all the equipment that will be used. And after the preparation has been done, we must have a third party to also come and inspect to ensure that all is safe before the activity can be carried on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mensa, for that contribution. That's a nice one. At this moment, I'm going to be handing over to my colleague, Mr. Dewale, to round up the whole section. Thank you for your time and thank you for joining this webinar. Thank you
all. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Gift. We all cannot deny that this has really been a very thorough, insightful session with everyone. We had people from attendees from Nigeria, Ghana, and also from the UK over the session. So I believe it was very, very insightful. And to this, I want to say that as we come to the close of today's insightful webinar on construction piling, I want to extend my sincere gratitude to each and every one of you for your active participation and engagement. It has been truly inspiring with in-depth knowledge and expertise shared by Mr. Gift. Mr. Gift's expertise in occupational health and safety has shed light on critical importance of implementing robust safety measures in construction projects, particularly in activities such as piling. His insight has not only enriched our understanding, but have also equipped us with valuable strategies to ensure the safety and well-being of all involved. Now, I would like to introduce you to Chevron Group, a leading provider of health, safety, and environmental consultancy and training services across Nigeria, UK, Ghana, and South Africa. Our services encompasses and not limited to on-site HSE management, management system implementation and ISO certification, environmental management and sustainability, HSE training. Our HSE training include process safety management, managing safely, environmental impact assessment, HSE 123. We have defensive driving, driving etiquette. We also have incident investigation courses. We have working safely, mine safety course, safety at sea, advanced project safety management, hazard leader safety, hazard leader and method course. We have jetty operation course, work at height training. We also have behavioral-based safety and leadership training. We also have vehicle and heavy equipment course, quality control and assurance course, HSE risk management and technique course. We also have ISO 9001, ISO 22001 food safety management, and many more. So I will also want to engage us further to make sure that we follow our social media handle, which is Chevron Consulting on LinkedIn, and Chevron Group on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and others. So we are also led by seasoned experts. Our team is dedicated to delivering top-notch support service to ensure organization meets their HSE objectives effectively, with focus on innovation and staying ahead of industry trends. We are committed to building safer, healthier, and sustainable workplace. So once again, I want to say thank you to everyone who participated in this particular webinar. I also want to tell you that for everyone who participated, we are looking at sending, because this particular session was very insightful, and we will not go all empty-handed. For those who waited from beginning to the end of the training, we're going to get a certificate of participation. Please don't underestimate our certificates, because I can tell you there was a testimonial on LinkedIn sometimes 2 years ago, where someone participated in our webinar and got a job. As a result, got a job in an international company with our webinar certificate. So please, I also want to assure you that you should maximize all opportunity you've gotten here. And also, you can also reach out to us for training opportunities anywhere you want to fill your skill gap in terms of your training needs. We are one step away from attending to you. So we also have our phone numbers displayed on the screen. Please, you can screenshot, you can type the number, you can copy it, and our emails are also displayed. You can also reach out to us at any point and at any time. Once again, thank you very, very, very much. I don't know if anybody has one or two to say before we close for the day.
Thank you for the certificate.
Hello, sir.
Yes, so go ahead.
Yes, I just want to know, when are we getting the certificate?
So you will get it because today's Friday. I'll show you before Monday, everybody will get their certificate.
Okay. So is it going to be sent in our emails or?
Yes, it's going to be an e-certificate.
Oh, okay. So do we have our emails, or we need to post our emails for you to be shared?
The link that you all registered to join this particular meeting, we have all your emails. So trust me, you're going to get all the information in your emails.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for coming. And bye.